I read all the comics, I watched all the cartoons, and I am here to talk about the 20 greatest G.I. Joe stories ever told. That's in any medium. We've scoured the IDW series, the Devil's Due, Marvel Comics, the Sunbow cartoon, the Deke cartoon. I'm kidding, there's no good stories in the Deke cartoon. That thing is trash. Anyway, so we're here to talk about the 20 greatest G.I. Joe stories of all time. This is my ranking. Let me know if there's one you think that should have been included in this list, and put it in the comments below. Okay, and this idea was given to me by someone who watches my channel, Tom Clarity. Also sent me some nice gifts, some extra G.I. Joe stuff that he didn't want anymore. I got a second crocodile for my Crocmaster, and I got wreckage here from this guy, so very cool. It's a great idea. He pitched this idea to me, so thank you to him. So let's get into it. Number 20, we're going to have Master and Apprentice 2. This is a really cool story in which Storm Shadow gets an apprentice, and he falls in love with her. So it's like it becomes his girlfriend. And this is one of the stories that I think really nails Storm Shadow as a character and where Storm Shadow is. This is like post the Marvel run. This is in the Devil's Due run. Basically, at this point, Storm Shadow has crossed over to be a good guy, and he's still like haunted. This is one of the things I love about Storm Shadow. He's such a fascinating character. He's haunted by all the things he had to do in the name of Cobra and all the awful things he's had to do. And so he takes on an apprentice. He falls in love with her, and Junko Kido, her name is. They fall in love. So then Zartan comes back. Now Zartan is like the head of the Red Ninjas. He's actually a character that is supposed to be Satan, which is an Argentinian version of Storm Shadow. What Zartan is getting revenge on Storm Shadow. Storm Shadow almost killing him in an earlier comic. So he takes his girlfriend, brainwashes the crap out of her, and he sends her out to kill Storm Shadow. And Storm Shadow fights, and it ends very tragically. By the way, I'm gonna like try to keep spoiler free here. So I'm gonna tell you the setup. I won't necessarily tell you the ending, but with the exception of a few things that I imagine, like if you don't know how Cold Slither, what happens in that Cold Slither episode, I don't know how you found this channel, right? So something like that. For the most part, it's going to be spoiler free. I want to set you up to go and like check these stories out yourself if you haven't experienced them yet, or if it was so long ago, like for some of this stuff, it was a long time ago. If you want to catch up, and I'll put links in the description to whatever is out there if it is accessible. Some of it's not, but anyway. So what really captures in this series is how tortured Storm Shadow is by this complex nature, that he's willing to do anything. He's willing to almost go too far to get vengeance for his uncle. And that leads him down a dark path, and he is, even as a good guy, he's still pretty much a dark character. Okay, next we have, and this is G.I. Joe Hearts and Minds. This is written by Max Brooks, who's actually a pretty great writer. If you've read World War Z, highly recommend World War Z, especially if you do Audible. The audiobook version is incredible. It's got Mark Hamill in it. It's got Max Brooks. It's got tons of actors playing all the different parts. I think Scorsese plays a part in the audiobook. One of the best audiobooks I've ever read. And Max Brooks is a great writer. I've read a bunch of his stuff. And this is so great that they brought in like this great writer who doesn't typically write comics to go and take on various stories about G.I. Joe. But what Hearts and Minds is sort of like backstories, origin stories of some of the characters. The one that really stood out to me, and having to pick one for this list, would be the Major Bludd storyline. And this one we learn that Major Bludd has a family, and this family is what has motivated him to do what he has to do and to make money to provide for his family. And so it brought a lot of complexity to a character. As I would say, actually, talking about how villains are complex. Major Bludd's not. He's not one of the more complex villains in the line. He's usually more on the line of psycho who takes orders and writes bad poetry. And this was one, this gave him some depth, which is a really interesting take. By the way, if you want to read any G.I. Joe comics, I'm not going to put the link to them in the description because those are some shady sites, but there are places where you can read just about every G.I. Joe comic. In fact, the other day I clicked on a shady link to read G.I. Joe comics online, and it turns out it wasn't a comic book website. It was a website fishing for my data. Now they have my data and basically who knows what else. Now, if this happens to you, you need Aura. Aura is the sponsor of this video. Chances are your information is out there too. Your private data is compiled by data brokers and sold to the highest bidder. This is done without your consent, and legally these data brokers have to remove your personal information if you ask them, but they make it very difficult to do. This is where Aura comes in. So now I've been using Aura for a couple of months now, and I find it has all kinds of useful tools. In fact, it basically has replaced like 3 different services that I was already paying for. For one, it has a VPN. So if you're at work and you want to bypass the firewall so you can look up pictures for the Baroness, for research, well, you can do that, and the VPN protects you with military-grade encryption. It also replaces service for antivirus protection. It comes with antivirus protection. It will scan your entire computer for malware or adware and remove it. It will also go online and search out companies that have put you on a list, and it will have your name removed. Every few days I get an email from a company saying, hey, we got your request to be taken off the list. I didn't do that. Aura did that for me, which is awesome. It also stores all your passwords, and it'll tell you when they suck. Like if mine is Destro, that's a pretty sucky password for me. It tells me, change it, genius. Comes with identity theft protection insurance up to $5 million. That's $1 million per person on your account. Aura also has certified data security and privacy. Your data is safeguarded using the same security standards as banks and the military. Plus, Aura will never sell your data to third parties. And they offer 24/7 US-based support. So again, this replaced a VPN I was paying for, an antivirus software I was paying for, and a credit check software I was paying for. So in my case, getting this subscription actually saved me money. And it has tons of other features. Not to mention, it gave me peace of mind to know that I'm protected. So you get all this in one app at one affordable price. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches and brokers. And if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/Destro is my spirit animal to try 2 weeks for free. Click on the link in the description, and that will be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed. And thanks to Aura for sponsoring this video. Next in line, we have the episode of Sunbow, Cold Slither. And what I love about, you're going to see on this list, all the various different Sunbow episodes have different feels. And this to me is a completely different feel than all the rest. This is the goofiest G.I. Joe episode maybe ever, or at least one of the goofiest. But it's still, it becomes iconic. It almost plays like a parody. It's just this fun version of Spinal Tap as a G.I. Joe cartoon. It has so many iconic moments. I think it really captures the spirit of the Dreadnoks too, in that they're like, you can't control them, because the whole idea is Cobra's going bankrupt, and so they start a rock band, and they're gonna put subliminal messages in this rock band and brainwash America. It works. Cold Slither becomes a huge hit, but then the Dreadnoks get lazy on stage, and they toss away the guitars and decide they don't want to play anymore. And then they revealing they're Milli Vanilli-ing it, and then you got some pretty great cameos by the 3 hot G.I. Joe girls. Playing groupies that kick the shit out of the Dreadnoks. It's just got a lot of iconic and fun moments in it. So I did do a parody of this behind the music. If you want to check that out, you can check that out right here. Did some stop motion for it, and made a whole behind the music for Cold Slither. Please check it out.
We was swimming in groupies. It was all the chocolate donuts and grape soda you could ever want. It was the time, man.
Now we're going to switch gears. Like I said, I want to be all over the place, and I tried to scour the various different versions of G.I. Joe. There's so many of them. And this is G.I. Joe Special Missions. What I love about the Special Missions series, this is a series that ran alongside G.I. Joe, the regular series. Larry Hama wrote both. And what Special Missions were they were like much more military. We weren't really, for the most part, weren't fighting Cobra in Special Missions. Instead, these were like G.I. Joe sent out on special missions across the world to do whatever, to fight, various different organizations or police actions or, things that the government really does in real life. So it has like a much more real feel, and Larry Hama is very good at that because he is a combat vet. And he does understand that world pretty well. He had written the Nam, which was a comic book. He had written some comics and was prepared to write Fury Force before he wrote G.I. Joe. So he has a knack for writing like real military stories. But this particular one is issue 22 that really stuck in my brain. And in this one, Shockwave is sent to a house where there's a hostage situation. There's this hideous man who's got a rictus, right? He's got that, which is basically what the Joker-like grin, and he can't move his face. His face is always in a grin. He's got this like white trashy wife, and they're holding this little kid hostage, and Shockwave is sent in, and they play a nice little trick on you that I won't give away. You got to read it. So, but great issue and a great series. Like so many of those issues stood out, but that was the one for me, which I just never forget. Next in line, we have yet another episode of G.I. Joe, the Sunbow animated series. And this is called Skeletons in the Closet, and this is the episode in which we learn that we learn Destro's origin, right? We see that his ancestor was selling arms to both sides. Cromwell came and like put the mask and forced him to wear the mask forever. And we learn this because Destro is telling the Baroness that he can't show her his face, which I love the idea because we know they have sex all the time. I've imagined that Destro and the Baroness have a relationship that's kind of like the Addams Family, you know how they always want to bang, like they just like I'm pretty sure that's Destro and the Baroness, that they're just clad in black leather. Destro's got the he's showing his chest. She's in tight black leather. They're banging all the time, right? So I think like the idea is like that he's never showing his face is funny because then is he just doing it with the mask on? Probably. I think that's probably true. No, she's obviously seen his face if you read the comic book. This is also the episode where we see Lady J goes to Scotland and she basically finds out that she's related to Destro. And one of the funniest things is she finds this out and there's like a portrait of like her. A girl looks just like her, and there's a portrait of a woman that looks like Destro. It's got like Destro's face, but it's got like a wig on, and it's goofy, it's crazy. But then in the end, it becomes this like eldritch horror shit. It's like Lovecraftian. It's got this cult, and they're like animal head mask, and a eldritch horror, creature comes out of a pot and tries to eat her, and she's walking around in negligee, and it's hot, and how hot is her voice? Let me just say this. I know I'm going to talk about how hot a cartoon is. Again, I do that all the time. But let me just say, how hot is Lady J's voice? It's all about the voice, man. I don't know the actress offhand, the name of the actress offhand. I'm sure I'll figure it. Her name's right here. Okay. Like the hottest voice. She's got that like sexy, raspy, kind of Demi Moore, like 85 sort of vibe.
I told you the truth. I inherited the manor house, but I didn't know a jacuzzi came with it.
It's really good stuff. Anyway, great episode, all around. Next in line, we have Memories of Mara. And this is, of course, an iconic episode of the G.I. Joe cartoon. And some of these, some of the cartoons really just goofy and fun. And then other times it actually does achieve levels of depth. And this is one that does that. There's a sort of sadness, like a bittersweetness to this episode that I really appreciate. And this is where Shipwreck, he meets a Cobra soldier who has been essentially she's been like altered to become like a mer lady, right? So she breathes underwater, and it's tragic because they can't really be together because she needs to be underwater. And yet they kind of fall for each other, and he steers her away from Cobra, and they kiss, and he says like I'm into mer ladies at the end, and it's just an awesome bit, and we definitely need a Mara please give us a Mara in G.I. Joe Classified immediately. Next in line, let's jump into the comic book. I'm like a super fan of the Larry Hama comic book. I read it. I bought it from the moment issue 1 came out, and I bought the whole run, and I still have all my comics to this day in boxes and bagged. And I just love what Larry Hama did with the comic book. I think he's an absolute genius. So one of my favorite runs in the comic book has to be this the run where we learn about Zartan, and this is where we learn that Zartan was the person who actually shot the Hardmaster, which is Storm Shadow's uncle, causing Storm Shadow to go on this vengeance journey. And Zartan had infiltrated the Arashikage clan by Professor Onihashi, who is like the Hattori Hanzo, the swordsmith, killed from Kill Bill. Hattori Hanzo, right? This master swordsmith. He creates these swords that are almost like magical in their ability. They're so powerful. They're so sharp. They're perfect swords. And he teaches Zartan the way of the sword. Zartan brings shame on him, and Onihashi kills himself out of shame and for the horror that he's brought on the Arashikage. And then the Blind Master hunts down Zartan, and they have a showdown. And what happens next is what turns it so tragic and ends up turning Zartan to be not quite he's never a good guy, right? But it gives him some complexity, and he sort of seeks his honor back after this moment, and he sort of becomes the Blind Master. He takes on an apprentice. So it's very, very interesting story, full of sadness and depth. One of the things that I love about G.I. Joe and the mythology of G.I. Joe is what Larry Hama did with the villains is that a lot of the villains are not evil. They're some of them are, and some of them are pure, Firefly's pretty much just a badass. Cobra Commander's just a complete psychopath. But a lot of the villains have a complexity and a story behind them, like Zartan and Destro and the Baroness. There's a real complexity there that you don't see in a lot of other things. They're villains, yeah, but sometimes they're villains just because they're greedy. They have different morals than you or I. They're complex and interesting, and occasionally not even villainous, right? So I think that is one of these moments. Next in line, okay, and this. Is this even G.I. Joe? You can debate me on whether this is G.I. Joe. This would be Battle Action Force. The issue, World Enemy number 1. This is the issue in which Baron Ironblood gets rid of his identity as Baron Ironblood. He betrays the Red Shadows, and he takes on the mantle of the Cobra Commander. So this is the moment in which both Baron Ironblood becomes Cobra Commander, and also Destro, who was originally called the Red Jackal, becomes Destro in the Action Force world. Is it worth including on this list when it's Action Force and not G.I. Joe? I think so, because it's got Cobra Commander, it's got Destro, it's a G.I. Joe story. Whether we want to call it Action Force or G.I. Joe, it's a G.I. Joe story. As much as any of these other things are. So, and it's really, really good. Their version of Cobra Commander is much creepier. He's quite disturbing. Baron Ironblood is an absolute madman. He just, he hires all these people to create his suit, and he trains himself with snakes. He starts living with snakes. And then he finally just becomes Cobra Commander, and then he executes everybody that helped him become Cobra Commander. So it's just a really interesting origin story for Cobra Commander. Beautifully illustrated in stark black and white. It's just got a gothic, awful, horrific feel to it. Really highly recommend it. You can read that in the Battle Action Force compendium that just came out. Next in line, we're going to have some inclusion from the Devil's Due run, which was a short-lived, run of the G.I. Joe comic, but did produce some really good storylines. But my absolute favorite storyline of the Devil's Due, and something that I kind of consider canon, even though it may not necessarily be considered canon or part of any other worlds, is the story about Zanya. Now, Zanya, if you're not aware, is Zartan's daughter. And what we see with Zanya is she decides she wants to go meet Daddy Zartan, right? And she's dating this guy who's sort of an abusive asshole who's like using her to do like street fight. He's like making her fight men and like almost beat them to death and like taking all the money, and he's using her. And so she goes to meet Daddy Zartan. She tracks him down, and we learn this tragic backstory of how she like burned down her mother and stepfather, and she was being abused, and it's very dark. And she meets Zartan, and he takes her under his wing. And you see this beginning of this little family unit, which is just such a cool thing. And it's like, of course, Zartan has illegitimate kids. He's laying pipe all around the world, probably putting on different identities. You know, that makes some sense. And of course, she's a badass because she's Zartan's daughter. So it's a great story. Highly recommend you check it out. And I'm hoping that one of these continuities, whether it's Larry Hama or Energon universe or maybe a future cartoon, brings Zanya in and and incorporates that idea because she's such a great character. Okay, next in line we have Nightmare Assault, and this is one of the greatest episodes of the G.I. Joe cartoon Sunbow series. And what this is Mindbender has figured out a way to sort of Freddy Krueger himself into your dreams, and he can like go and find your deepest fears and trigger them. And so he starts doing this, and all the G.I. Joes they can't sleep anymore, and they're becoming like bad at their job. They're afraid. Hawk is too afraid that he's going to kill one of his soldiers, so he stops taking chances, and he becomes like afraid, and he starts to like destroy the whole G.I. Joe team from the inside, except for Lowlight, because Lowlight had such a horrifically abusive childhood. His father just would like scream at him, call him a pussy, and say like, go out. I'm sure he doesn't say pussy in the cartoon, but I think that's what his father's implying. He's a pussy. Go out in the night and just kill 20 rats. Don't come back until you have 20 dead rats. And so that's what Lowlight's childhood was like. So Lowlight just has nightmares anyway. And so it doesn't matter. So Lowlight goes through a night, and he's like, all right, I have nightmares every night. Whatever, you guys can't deal with nightmares. And he like conquers the nightmares. So because Lowlight's abuse is so horrific, Lowlight, uses this to sort of conquer the Cobra. He becomes like a Freddy Krueger, like thing himself, where he can control the dreams. And he turns it on Mindbender, and he ends up, with his first good night's sleep. And it's just an incredible story. Some really good nightmare imagery. It's got like a very cool horror feel to it, which is just like very different from the majority of this cartoon. It's one of the things that makes the cartoon so great is the many different styles that it has. Next in line we have, and this is a late Larry Hama comic book, but man is it incredible. And I think if you haven't read it, you gotta seek it out. It's one of the best things he's ever written. And this is called Silent Option. What this is Agent Helix's an Agent Helix story, and it sort of incorporates her origin story. I believe she's autistic, she's a savant, and so she's like brilliant at killing, right? So that's her thing, is she's got this like almost supernatural ability to see. She has what is called total battlefield awareness. She can see everything around her and knows where everything is, and is an incredible fighter. And part of that is that she's a savant. But what happens is she is found by Snake Eyes as a child. He goes into a ship that has where they were stealing children for human trafficking. He takes them all out, opens up the door, and she's just in a chair, and all the men are terrified of her because she's like the super violent kid. Snake Eyes takes her. It gives her to Hawk, and Hawk finds placement, finds foster home for 2 former operators, and then she grows up. But what the story Silent Option is, it's basically she hunts down the woman. As this woman is just like a total different villain, not a Cobra villain, but a human trafficker, this horrific villain who also is partnered with Firefly, because you can hire Firefly. Anybody can hire him. He's like money. That's all. It's her hunting down the human trafficker that stole her as a kid and also stole and killed all these other kids. So it's like an incredible story, though. And if you see the cover of the Agent Helix box, you will see a SWAT team outside of a house, and that is a reference to the Silent Option story. Highly recommend it. Okay, so this one is a really funny one, but one of my favorite things in G.I. Joe is this one little moment. And Serpentor is going to be one of the most annoying characters in the cartoon. He is a sort of ridiculous, over-the-top character. But in the comic book, the Serpentor that we know from the comic was much different. It was actually inspiring. He could inspire the troops. This moment where he, gets shot and he just, cauterizes the wound with a knife and he pries out the bullet and he's like, what's a bullet wound? Who gives a shit? And, all rallies the troops. But the great Serpentor story here, he doesn't last very long. Larry Hama kills him off pretty quickly, and then he resurrects him and kills him, killing him. He's killed him 3-4 times at least now. But in this first, one of the first times we get a real chance to spend time with Serpentor, he's brought in to have a dinner. Dr. Mindbender is going to have dinner with him, and he asks the Dreadnoks to prepare the dinner, which is a great. Why would you do that? You're getting chocolate donuts and grape soda. If you ask Dreadnoks, they don't look like they can cook. I mean, they're disgusting people. So, but they bring over pizza, and Mindbender is incensed. He's like, "How dare you serve pizza to Serpentor?" And Serpentor's like, "No, I love pizza. Here's why I love pizza, because I was there for the invention of pizza. We used it, and we were all starving. My regiment in Rome was starving when he's Caesar, right? And but he's not Caesar like the Caesar. He's Julius Caesar as a general, and he's and this guy found a way to make pizza out of pita bread and putting toppings on it. And so basically Serpentor is around for the invention of pizza, and he tells a story about how the invention of pizza swung a battle. It's a great, awesome, little, weird, quirky moment in G.I. Joe lore that is just so fun. Next in line, and this one is an obvious one, is the Snake Eyes origin story. And yeah, it's overplayed now. We've seen 50 versions of it. We've seen a version of it in every movie version of G.I. Joe that exists, except for the Snake Eyes Origins one, which is just some weird shit. I don't know what the fuck that was about. But in the various different versions of the G.I. Joe Retaliation, G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra, there's references to it. We've seen it in G.I. Joe Resolute. We've seen it all over the place. But, I mean, come on. I think it's just an iconic, incredible story. What makes this bit so great, and this, of course the story is, Snake Eyes was in Vietnam with Storm Shadow and Stalker, and he befriended Storm Shadow, came back to the U.S., became a ninja, learned the Arashikage way, but started to steal the show a little, and Storm Shadow got jealous. And so at some point, we think Storm Shadow tries to shoot him, but he's died. He did not. It was actually somebody else. And that arrow went and hit the Hardmaster instead of Snake Eyes, killing the Hardmaster, which set Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow in this sort of duel, hating each other, trying to kill each other, even though they were once brothers, best friends. What made it so great is that you didn't know it for a couple of years, right? Snake Eyes was just this mysterious guy with a mask, didn't talk. If you saw his face, you'd throw up because it's so horribly disfigured. That happens in several comics, by the way. People take his mask off and they vomit because his face is so horrific, right? We get into this issue 26, 27, and now we find out the truth. And that was what made it so powerful, is those years of waiting and the way that they pulled that off. It was really good. That's a great secret to world building, is you make the audience wait and then you reveal. One of the reasons why or Snake Eyes Origins movie is a terrible idea for your first movie to kick off a franchise. No. Next in line, we're going to go to the current day storylines, and we have the Energon universe. And so far I've been loving the Energon universe, but the one that stands out to me is the Destro story. And here's why. The little Destro miniseries, if you haven't got it, you can get it in a trade paperback book. Highly recommend it. But what I love about the Destro one is it does so much new world building for Destro and new lore, but it also treats him in such a cool way. Basically treats him like somewhere between James Bond and Shaft. Right? He's so cool. He's walking around, he's got his shirt collar open, disco medallion, he's wearing a fur jacket, he's getting the girl. He's a complete badass. He's sort of always one-upping everybody. He's always, and that is actually pretty consistently true throughout. If you read almost every version of Destro, except for the UK, where they make him basically like a lackey whipping boy. Pretty much any version of Destro. Destro is competent, and he's always winning. He's always getting the upper hand. He's one of the most competent people in the storyline. Even the cartoon, where all the villains are sort of goofy, he's probably the most, significantly powerful of all of them. Another thing that's great about it is it also plays with this idea that Destro is selling weapons to everybody. So if the American government comes at him, he can basically pull the receipts and say, "Hey, you want me to announce to the world that you bought all these weapons from me? That'll look pretty good too, huh?" Right? So he's always doing this stuff. It's very, very cool stuff. So highly recommend it. Energon Universe Destro. And one of the coolest things about Destro, and why I'm so obsessed, is that he's a villain, but he's kind of a hero, right? So he's like an anti-hero, and a lot of times he sides with G.I. Joe. He flips sides because he has honor. He has a sort of point of view that maybe isn't the right point of view, maybe isn't a good point of view, but I mean, he's about as villainous as Tom Shelby in Peaky Blinders. He's that kind of guy. He's on the side of the bad guys, but he has a code. Next in line, we have one of the best two-parter episodes of the G.I. Joe cartoon ever, and this is called There's No Place Like Springfield. And what I love about this is sometimes the G.I. Joe cartoon is goofy and fun, like Cold Slither and Cobra Election. They do some weird goofy stuff, but then sometimes it goes deep and it feels like this is like an anthology series, like a Twilight Zone or Black Mirror. I mean, they're playing with weird sci-fi concepts. And so in this one, Shipwreck wakes up and he's basically in a coma and he doesn't remember anything, but he finds out that he has like a wife and kids, and his wife is Mara. She's been cured by Doc, and he's got a child. But then it descends into this weird, like Truman Show, like horror story where he sees Roadblock and Roadblock just melts right in front of him, and he starts to realize things aren't what they seem, and he's being brainwashed in some way. And then it descends into madness, and it just goes and becomes like this very weird, surreal horror tale, and one of the coolest episodes in the G.I. Joe cartoon. Now, like flipping back from cartoon, going back to the comic book, this is an issue of the Marvel run, issue number 34, I believe, in which we have the whole episode is just one duel between Ace and Wild Weasel. In this, they have this incredible duel that goes on for the entire book. And then in the end, they've exhausted all their weapons and they just sort of salute each other. And it just has a great feel. One of the most memorable moments in the Larry Hama comic. Well, there's one-offs where something very cool happens. He just really can tell a story visually. And so that made this really memorable. Next in line, we have from the comic book, and this is one of my favorite stories of all time, is a Kwinn storyline. Now, this is early days of G.I. Joe, first couple of years. You have a Kwinn, the Inuit warrior, he's hired by Cobra, and at one point, though, the storyline that really interests me is Kwinn, Dr. Venom, the Weasel, and Snake Eyes. They get bombed, and we think all of them are dead. So everybody thinks Snake Eyes is dead. And what's happened is they've survived miraculously, and now the three of them go on like an odyssey to find their way home. Kwinn and Snake Eyes begin this like relationship of mutual respect and honor, and Dr. Venom is just a complete villain until the point where he's shooting people in the back, and he's like pure evil. And it basically has a full arc of this like friendship, sort of honor relationship between Kwinn and Snake Eyes. Again, playing one of the strengths of G.I. Joe is one of the few storylines where the villain I can think of where the villains aren't all villain-y, right? They're complex and they have arcs of their own. And this has a really great story arc to it. Next in line, okay, and now I know you're going to want me to say G.I. Joe Resolute, but I'm not going to, okay? And here's why. I love G.I. Joe Resolute 2. G.I. Joe Resolute is an awesome, and if you know what G.I. Joe Resolute is, it's this really great, extremely dark version of G.I. Joe in which people die, Major Bludd dies, Bazooka dies, there's consequences, it's super violent. It is, a more R-rated version of G.I. Joe. Here's why I don't make the list and something else does, okay? Is I feel like while it is great, it more plays like a great trailer to a series we never got, right? Like it's the promise of a good story rather than a great story. And it's 43 minutes. It delivers, I think, something like that. It delivers, a feel, but not much in the way of story. Had it gone on and become like a series, and they'd done like 2, 3, 4 seasons, I think it probably would have produced some of the best stories of all time. But it just didn't. It was just this, and then they gave up. So, what I'm going to say that you should check out if you're a fan of Resolute and you haven't read this yet is because it does the same thing but better. Is read IDW's Cobra series, okay? And this is specifically part of the run which involves Chuckles. But the IDW, read the whole series. I'm going to consider that one thing. The IDW Cobra series. What that is the promise of what Resolute would have been if it had gone on for a while. It's the IDW run. And the IDW basically had an interesting approach that didn't always work. They had the Hamaverse, they had a second continuity, and then they would jump around for like a year, and they would allow another story to be told in it. Some of them were good, and some of them were awful, and but this is the one that was really incredible. It's written by Mike Costa, maybe a couple of other people. What this is, it shows Chuckles infiltrating Cobra, and the things he has to do to infiltrate Cobra are just absolutely horrific. And it becomes this like Game of Thrones style like manipulation game with him and the Crimson Twins, and it just is absolutely as dark, disturbing as anything on TV. Right? It really is. It's just like an absolute brutal. It's an R-rated, almost, NC-17 rated version of G.I. Joe. So if that's what you want, if you want something like that, this is the one you want to read. So it's the Cobra series from IDW, and Chuckles is the star. Okay. Now, I want to say, like, is that my ideal version? No. I like that there's, for me, the ideal version is maybe something like the Hamaverse, maybe a little darker. And this was like so dark it became really depressing. But I do like going on that path for a little while. It's not going to be my definitive version of G.I. Joe, but following that dark path for a little while is really, really interesting. And it is one of the best stories I've ever read in the G.I. Joe world. Okay, my number 2 greatest stories in G.I. Joe and in the whole mythology of G.I. Joe, and this is called The World Without End, which is possibly the greatest episode or 2 episodes of the cartoon series. In this one, we see Steeler has a brush with death, and then he decides that maybe he doesn't want to be in G.I. Joe anymore. He's also tiring of the idea that it's G.I. Joe versus Cobra. They fight. Nobody ever wins. Nobody ever gets the upper hand. It's going to go on forever, and he's like, I'm quitting. So he goes on this mission, and then they're sent to a parallel world. What we have basically is like It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life in a G.I. Joe episode. Steeler goes in this other dimension. He sees what would happen if G.I. Joe had lost the war. What if it, and throughout that he sees like Cobra's taken over. Cobra Commander's like basically emperor, and the Dreadnoks are cops, which is great. It has this very cool like Clockwork Orange feel to it. And the world is just completely screwed up. The Baroness is in love with him, and he goes on this bizarre odyssey. What's so great about this too is that it's really a great story arc for Steeler. It shows a lot of depth and complexity, and as he kind of learns, like, yeah, there is a reason I'm fighting this war. There is a reason I'm risking my life, and so it's an absolutely brilliant episode. Okay, and so that brings us to the number 1 greatest G.I. Joe story ever told, and that would be issue 21 of the Marvel Run, Silent Interlude. It's so iconic. It's such a masterpiece of visual storytelling, and it did so much in the way what it tells you within the panels of the relationship between Destro and the Baroness. It's like Destro thinks the Baroness is dead at this point, and he's playing with these chess pieces, or the relationship between Scarlet and Snake Eyes, as Snake Eyes goes to rescue Scarlet, and then Scarlet goes to rescue Snake Eyes, and there's just this like real pure love between them. This is the first time we established the relationship between Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes, as the reveal at the end of this shows that they are both members of the same ninja clan, which is just an absolute brilliant ending. But all the panels are filled with such complexity. This also, to me, is the moment that really established how I see Snake Eyes as like Snake Eyes killing. This also was echoed in G.I. Joe Resolute, which is like when Snake Eyes goes to kill, he's not running in, he is like sneaking behind you like Jason in Friday the 13th, and he's taking you out, and he just takes the Cobras and the ninjas out one by one in these very cool creative kills, and it's just a beautiful piece of writing, beautiful without any words at all, absolute masterpiece. And the greatest G.I. Joe story ever told. That's what I think. Let me know. What do you think? Is there anything I missed? What episodes would you put in? What's your favorite? Tell me in the comments below. And I am going to start doing a rewatch of all of the episodes. You can maybe check out my reviews of some cartoons right here.